There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. This is the second video I'm making on my wine Sunday. So I am in the enviable and unusual position of having been tagged on a video that I originated the tag for. However, this is the new improved version of my tag that Steve Donahue has refurbished, and I almost completely approve. My original tag was called Grab 10 Books Off the Shelf and Talk About Them tag, and that was a bit cumbersome. So Steve has changed it to the Grab-And-Gab Tag, which rolls much more trippingly off the tongue, and he's also imposed a rather arbitrary limit of 5 books, which he himself violated on his tag earlier today. I still like 10 books, but I'm just going to start and let's see how many books I get to. I've got a stack of 10. I might only do 5, or I might do 7.5 like Steve did. But I think it was a great idea to change the name. Oh my god! Brevity has never been my strong suit. I've pulled a mix of books I've read and books I haven't read, and I haven't done much preparation. I hope I've got some pronunciation research. I think I'm ready to pronounce most of the titles and authors, but the first one is a New York review of books book, Grand Hotel by Vicky Baum. This was originally published in Germany in, I think, 1929, and then translated soon after and made into a movie with Joan Crawford and Greta Garbo. I know nothing about any of that, but somebody on Litzy posted about it a couple years ago, and I was intrigued. I love the cover. Isn't that cover fabulous? And I was browsing in a bookstore in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan 2 summers ago, so about a year and a half ago, and it was Kenji's first visit to Canada with me, and he and I and my mum were there, and I looked at this book and said, oh, I think I've got enough, I won't get it. And Kenji said, oh, let me get it for you. So this was the first of 2 books Kenji has ever bought for me, so it has high sentimental value, and I haven't read it yet. Has anyone out there read it? It's supposed to be good. This is a wonderful memoir about a bookstore owner. It's called The Bookshop That Floated Away by Sarah Henshaw, a UK memoir. Sarah Henshaw is a young woman who, I think she gave up an advertising job or something in the rat race of London and went home to, I've forgotten where in the countryside of the UK, Staffordshire, and then she gets the bright idea to buy a houseboat and fill it with books and travel throughout the UK on the river selling books, and this is her memoir, and it's just wonderful. She has a great sense of humor, and she also writes very beautifully about more serious topics, so it's a real blend of tones, and I just fell in love with her. I think she has a website, and after this book came out, she took this bookshop across the channel, so I think she's, the last time I checked, she's now in France. She went and selling books. She's quite a character. I really recommend this. Now, it has a fairly fair to middling rating on Goodreads, so it's not for everyone, but I think it was either a 4 or a 5-star read for me. I really got a kick out of it. Now for something completely different. The Joy of Yiddish by Leo Rosten. I bought this to prepare for one of the classes that I teach on Tuesday mornings. Is fairly high level, and it's all seniors. Probably the youngest student would be maybe 70, 68 or something, up to about early 80s. But they're fairly high level, and I am writing a textbook for them. So I prepare the unit in advance, which basically means the night before sometimes, and they love the material that I write for them far better than any kind of textbook that we could find. I was planning to do a unit on Yiddish English because it's so fascinating. So much Yiddish has made its way into everyday English, and I don't know about British English, but certainly North American English. It's so prevalent. Kvetch, complain, I hope I can pull them out of my brain kosher, of course. It's okay. Peacenik. My favorite, which is not in this book. I was surprised it's not in this book. Verklempt, which means too emotional to be able to speak. I'm all verklempt. Putz. Idiot. Putz. Now there is, I was talking a couple videos ago about Anglo-Saxon English, where you can really feel it in your belly. Well, Yiddish is definitely in the belly language too. Putz, I can just feel it. Schmozzle, which is kind of like a messy situation. Schmozzle. So many. Oh, well, the one I was flipping through it a little bit more detail to prepare for this video, and the one that I was surprised to find is boo-boo. You know, little child hurt their little finger and they're crying. And, oh, boo-boo, let me kiss your boo-boo. That comes from bulbe, which I don't know how to pronounce, but it's originally a Yiddish word, bulbe. I also can see through flipping through this book that a lot of these words that I know with only having one meaning, there's several meanings, but I have so many favorites, and they've just, I guess it's through TV that they have become so familiar to non-Jewish North Americans, and I just thought it would be really interesting for my students. Kibosh, my dad has always said that, put the kibosh on something, which means shut it down, stop it, put an end to something. But originally it meant nonsense. Kibitz, kind of talk instead of working, or chatter mindlessly. Quit your kibitzen. So many. My idea was to do a chapter in my textbook on Yiddish English, and then the more I thought about it, my students, they're high level, but I think it would be too much for them. The pronunciation would be difficult, and it would be too overwhelming for them. So maybe I'll just randomly teach them some of this vocabulary, a word at a time. They might be interested, but one whole unit, it would be too much. This was one that I had to put the kibosh on. I'm so clever. This is a novel I read earlier this year by Penelope Gilliatt called A State of Change. Originally came out in 1967. Have you heard of Penelope Gilliatt? I certainly hadn't, but she's most famous for writing the screenplay of the 1971 novel Sunday, Bloody Sunday. And she was actually... What's the famous New Yorker movie reviewer? Steve obviously knows. Curtis should know. Mr. Books and Film. The most famous. It must be in the introduction. Pauline Kael. They actually wrote that column alternately for many years. So she's well known to that level. She's not well known as a novelist. And I really enjoyed this. This was a 4-star read for me. It didn't quite hang together as a novel, but it's about a Polish immigrant to London. She's a cartoonist, Kakia. She has a very complicated love life with two men who are best friends, and that takes up a lot of the plot. And as a whole, it didn't quite work, but there were so many set pieces and interesting discussions about politics and gender mores of the time. It was set in the 1960s in London, that there's parts of this that I remember as vividly as when I read them, including a language game that Kakia and her husband played that I won't take the time to explain, but very satisfying read. And the publisher, I don't usually talk about publishers, is Capuchin Classics. They reprint books. Here is the postcard. The foreword is by Ali Smith. I don't think I ever read it, which is my bad. But they have published out-of-print books by A.A. Milne, Charles Morgan, Michael Arlen, Storm Jameson. Quite enjoyed this one. Next is a Chinese novella, and this is also an interesting imprint. This is Penguin Specials, or Penguin Specials, China Specials, a series of short novellas from China. Each one is about, I paid, well, this was 800 yen. This was $8. But the other one I got was only about $5, and I bought them in an English bookstore in Tokyo. So I've read 2 from this series, and this is Marrow by Jan Lianke. This story is grotesque and wonderful. It's about a fierce, here's relentless for you, a fierce Chinese woman who gives birth to how many? 4 mentally impaired children. They're all have various unspecified degrees or varieties of mental retardation. And then her husband commits suicide, but remains omnipresent in the story as a ghost. And she raises these kids, and she does her damnedest to find them spouses. And it's that story, and she doesn't give up, and she doesn't give up. This is not an emotional story in the conventional sense. This is more on the grotesque side, but I still fell in love with the mother for her fierce determination to take care of her kids. But it's just a weird and wacky story, and I keep using that word grotesque, but if you read this, you will know why. This introduced me to Jan Lianke, and I read his, I think it was a Booker International shortlisted or long-listed novel, and the name has gone out of my head. I'll put it at the bottom. But I'm quite interested in his wacky writing, and it's all started with this last year, Marrow. Okay, well, I just lost the last 10 minutes of the video I thought I was finished making, so I'm going to redo the last 10 minutes, and hopefully I'll be as spontaneous and wonderful as I was the first go-around. So, the last 5. Tinkers by Paul Harding. When I first nattered on about this book a few minutes ago, I said it was a British novel, but no, it's not. It's an American novel, and it won the Pulitzer. When was it published? 2009. I've heard a little bit about it. I know it's about a clockmaker who's on his deathbed, and it's just under 200 pages. Supposed to be really good. Has anybody read it? I guess I thought that it was a British novel because Tinker is very British English, I think. But whatever. This is a 1980 novella by Bruce Chatwin, and the layout and coloring of this book is terrible. You can't see the title printed in orange here, but it's The Viceroy of Ouida. And on the back, they have the blurb on blue ink on blue background. It's just ridiculous. Set in the 1800s, and it's about a young Brazilian who goes to the African kingdom of Dahomey, present-day Benin in Africa, to become a slave trader. I've never read any Bruce Chatwin. Have you? Another unread book, a book of short stories by a Filipino writer, F. Saino Jose, Platinum. The 10 Filipino short stories. Don't know anything about him. I picked this book up at a used bookstore in Tokyo for about $3. It's an excursion into the swamplands of the Filipino psyche. Hi again, costume change. Actually, it's 24 hours later. I think Steve Donahue has hacked me because he paired my original grab 10 books off the shelf and talk about them tag into, what the hell did he call it now? It's Grab-And-Gab? I think that's what he called it. Love the new title, but he said it should only be 5 books, and he didn't do 5 books, but I can't seem to get these last few books into a video that saves. So I think Steve Donahue has taken over my computer. He's not only trying to ram Anthony Trollope down my throat, which is not a bad fate to have, but he's not letting me finish my goddamn 10 books. So I got 2 left. I am having some major video issues with my iPad, but I'm having trouble getting videos to save properly. So hopefully I can get these last 2 done. And Queer Japan from the Pacific War to the Internet Age. This is a very academic gay studies text by Mark McClelland, and it was expensive. I think I paid about $40 for it. It's from 2005. Really interesting topic. So it's talking about gay community, the gay LGBTQ community in Japan from World War II to the present. But I just can't get into it because of the writing. I just hate this kind of dense academic writing. I can basically understand what's being said. I'm sure a lot of it goes over my head, but, I have a master's degree in English, and I lived in this world for far too long. But I am allergic to it. So I didn't get very far past the introduction and maybe a couple pages into the first chapter, but there's the title of the first chapter. Heteronormativity on the Road to War. Now, I just hate that kind of word, heteronormativity. It just means the cultural hegemonic, here's another word I hate, but hegemonic assumption that heterosexuality is normal and everything else is abnormal. I understand what it means, but it's a horrible word. Heteronormativity. Ugh. So I couldn't really get past the title. And just to pick a couple sentences at random to show the kind of academic writing that I hate. This is from the introduction. The history outlined here is one of both continuities and fractures, and of indigenous ideas that continued to exist alongside foreign borrowings. Continuities and fractures, those words give cultural theorists erections, for sure. Trans-historical reductiveness. Yeah, this is just not my thing, so I'll probably never read it. But if I could just hold my nose and get through to the actual facts presented about gay life in Japan from World War II to the present, there's probably a lot of really interesting stuff in here. My book number 10 is also a Japanese book, a book I picked up at Book Off for $1. Haven't even bothered to take the price tag off yet. Japanese Proverbs, Wit and Wisdom by David Galef, which I didn't notice until right now. Got a Spanish language Jesus bookmark in it. One idiom or one proverb per page with lovely illustrations. So first in kanji, then in romaji. Romaji is just Japanese language rendered in the Roman alphabet, and then English, and then a little explanation. So I love Japanese proverbs. Let's see if I can pick out a couple. And a lot of them, you can translate them into a Western proverb. So the Western proverb, all that glitters is not gold. In Japanese, miso no miso kusai wa jo miso ni arazu. My Japanese pronunciation is not bad, but it's certainly not perfect. The translation is, the bean paste that smells like bean paste is not the best quality. It's a little bit obscure, but this is one of my favorites. Nana Korobi Yaoki. This was taught to me by some drinking buddies after the breakup of my last relationship. I was mildly heartbroken, but it wasn't a big emotional calamity, but I was feeling a little sorry for myself, and I was taught Nana Korobi Yaoki, which means if you fall down 7 times, get up 8 times. I love that. This is also the title in English, Fall Down 7 Times, Get Up 8. Direct translation of this proverb. It's the title of the memoir by the young autistic Japanese man who has made a very successful life for himself, and it was translated into English by the British novelist David Mitchell, and it has that title. There's the graphic for Nana Korobi Yaoki. Another of my favorites is Neko ni Koban, which is the Japanese version of Pearls Before Swine. Neko is cat, so a gold coin to a cat has no meaning. Pearls before swine. And I often like to make a joke when somebody points out a beautiful Japanese girl to me or whatever. I say, oh, Neko ni Koban, which is also a little bit of a pun because Neko in Japanese gay slang means bottom. But we'll save the Japanese gay slang for a separate video. As I was flipping through, I just found one I've never heard. I almost peed my pants. This one is hilarious. Heio hitte shiri tsubome. There's no use scrunching up your buttocks after a fart. I love Japan! So basically means there's no use shutting the barn door after the horse has bolted. It's too late. Heo hite shiri tsubome. So there. That is the end of my Grab-And-Gab tag. Steve, maybe I made it. Maybe I thwarted you. Thank you for letting me share, as they say in AA.